Evening, beautiful people. I hope you're well. I hope you're having a lovely day. Now, I was watching a Jubilee interview during my lunch break between Patrick Bet David. He's a millionaire from the US, but he was born in Iran, and then he immigrated to the US. He grew up in like a poor family, but he figured it out and he created an insurance company and is worth millions today. And in the interview, there was a lady that said, "How are there billionaires in the world and there are poor people in the world?" And the way she said it, the context was that for someone to be a billionaire, they have to steal or exploit from the poorest people. And so someone is only a billionaire because someone else doesn't have. And I don't agree with that statement. I totally disagree because I believe if someone creates a product or service for $1,000 and a million people buy it, they become a billionaire. But because they created a product or service doesn't mean that they held a gun to the heads of the people who bought it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they exploited the people who are poor in order to create that business or service. Now, obviously, there are billionaires who do exploit poor people to create their wealth, but it doesn't mean that every billionaire that exists exploit poor people to create their wealth. And it doesn't mean that, because when people say this, they're assuming that wealth is a zero-sum game and that the only way for someone who's extremely wealthy to become wealthy is to take money from someone who's extremely poor. But that's not the way the world is. Value is infinitesimal. Value is infinite, which means that the person who created ChatGPT did not steal from a farmer in order to create ChatGPT. He created a product that's worth billions, if not trillions of dollars today, but he didn't necessarily take from anyone else. And he doesn't force people to pay £20 a month or £50 a month to use ChatGPT. People choose to use ChatGPT of their own volition. And someone else is going to create an even more useful software in the future ad infinitum. There's always going to be more useful software created or more useful technology created that would make people billionaires and trillionaires. If you look at someone like King Solomon from the Bible, King Solomon was worth at least $4 trillion. How do I know this? Calculate the tributes he got paid from the Queen of Sheba, multiply that by the timeline he spent on the throne, which is around um, 40 years. So when you multiply the timeline he spent on the throne, 40 years, by the amount he got paid in gold from the Queen of Sheba and the other kings, you realize that King Solomon was worth at least $4 trillion before he left this planet, before he went to heaven. He didn't steal from poor people within his kingdom. He offered counsel, offered wisdom, gave speeches to crowds, gave tutelage. He was a consultant. He helped kings and queens to give them advice on how to run their kingdoms effectively, to create peace, because his kingdom was peaceful. And so he didn't steal from the poorest people within his kingdom to become wealthy. Mansa Musa didn't steal from the poorest people within his kingdom to become wealthy. Mansa Musa was blessed to be ruling over a kingdom, modern day Sudan, which had a lot of gold at the time. And so he became wealthy from the trade of the gold. He didn't steal from the poorest within his kingdom to become wealthy. He found a way to create value by making deals with people. So even today, the billionaires and millionaires don't necessarily have to have stolen from people to create the level of value that they've created. They found a way to solve market problems, whether it's in terms of advertising or content creation or insurance or business, finance, consultancy, engineering, medicine, whatever. They found a niche, they found a way to solve a problem for either a lot of people or very few extremely wealthy people. And because they found a way to solve that problem, they've become millionaires and billionaires. Elon Musk doesn't force anyone to buy Teslas. People spend $40,000 to buy Teslas. Why? Because they see it as valuable. So at the end of the day, I've heard this a lot. I've heard all demographics of people say this. I've heard Africans say this. I've heard Indians say this. I've heard British people say this. But it's not true. Just because someone is extremely wealthy, that doesn't mean that they stole money from the poor. The world is not a zero-sum game. Value is infinite. That's why I even believe that even if there's an infinite amount of billion-dollar ideas waiting for someone to tap into them and to bring them from the ether into physical reality. So wealth is infinite. It's just I always pray for this. I pray, God, please open my mind to ideas that can help me create wealth for myself, my family, and my community. That can help me to impact the world for good and not for evil. Because I truly believe that there's an infinite amount of ideas that could make everyone a billionaire, that can make everyone a millionaire. In fact, I don't even believe that. I believe that we can live in a world where everyone is rich. We could live in a world where everyone is wealthy and the things that people don't want to do, like cleaning the sewers, can be automated. We can create robots to do the jobs that nobody wants to do so that everyone chooses what they want to do and everyone follows their passion. But in order to reach that world, that means we each have to be constantly looking for problems to solve for one another. And unfortunately, some people would rather be receivers than givers. Some people don't want to figure out a problem that can solve for other people. They want others to figure out how to solve their problems without them necessarily figuring out how to solve the problems of other people. And because some people think like that, they'll end up being poor. But if they reverse their mindset and they change their mindset from waiting on people to solve their problems to actively going out in the market and trying to see how they can solve people's problems at a high level, then they would be wealthy. And I believe all of us could be wealthy. So, anyways, thanks for listening to my TED Talk. I appreciate you. I love you. Take care of yourselves and have a good evening.